And we are live.
Welcome.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Star Walking or Skyforce on Live. We are just making sure everyone's starting to rock up. So we're not going to get straight into it yet, but we do have a bit of an agenda today. Deb, would you like to run through it?
Sure. So this afternoon, I was about to say this morning, this afternoon we're going to talk about our recent Facebook and Twitter poll. So which was, who would you want to be in isolation with in regards to droids? We have a bit of a discussion about that. We also will be having, hello Gary, thanks for joining us. Got a bit of a, someone's joined us already. That's fantastic. I see we got 8 people watching. We have a special guest, which is Don. Oh, you know what? I realized in regards to pronouncing people's names, I may get this wrong. So my understanding is it's donbies, or is it bees? I think it's bees. Bees? Yes. Okay, it's donbies. So donbies will be joining us, and we're going to have a couple of questions in regards to his involvement with Star Wars and his involvement with the club and what he's recently been up to. We're going to do a little bit of Can You Fool a Star Wars Expert? And we're not doing trivia today because we thought that it might be more entertaining to talk to Don than it would be to listen to me ramble off some bits of trivia that you may or may not know the answer to, which are really usually very hard. So that's what the plan is.
But
Some of the
first,
things, yes. All right, off you go, Luke.
well, thank you for all those who have renewed their membership for this year for Star Walking 2020. It is a bit of a shaky start to the year, but we do plan as soon as we can come out of isolation do as many activities as possible as a club. So we do encourage you guys to renew your membership as soon as you can. If you do renew, you will get a gift posted out to you. We're in the process of posting them out at the moment, which is a cool keyring. But yes, if you haven't received it, don't stress. The mail is taking a lot longer than usual. So, guys, thank you for joining us, and we hope that you want more of this. So, hey, we do have Don joining us today. So, if you have a question that you'd like Don to answer, post it into the live comments. We'll have a look at them later on. And there you go, straight away. Deb, that should be on this side. Deb has got the keyring there, ready to go. So she's signed up for 2020 already, and so is Jeff and Andre and Shane and a few others, and we encourage you all to do the same. So, shall we get to it? What was our Twitter poll again? Who was the winners?
Sure. So the other thing, actually, before we start talking about the Twitter poll, there was one of the things that you also get from becoming a member of Star Walking is you get access to our exclusive access to our newsletter. And that's one of the things I just wanted to, promote. We have a dedicated person who creates the newsletter on a regular basis. It's brilliant, and we have different people who will write articles and submit it, and I just wanted to share with you a couple of the pages that are available within our newsletter. So bear with me for a second while I pull these up, and then you can see what kind of quality of what it is that we will be, what you could find if you're a member, what kind of things you could be looking at in the newsletter. And I'm having a technical problem, so bear with me a second.
So, for those who don't know, while Deb's trying to get the newsletter up, Darren puts together our newsletters on a fairly regular basis. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer to do, sometimes it's pretty quick. It all depends on the content that's available. We do have interviews that are conducted. We, try to, find all the latest information and bring it to you. Something that's maybe not necessarily just spread over the internet, but something that's a little bit more technical, a bit more specific, and something that might interest you. So every month there's something different we put into it, and what Darren puts together for him. So it's not just him writing all of it. There are other people who contribute and write on a regular basis. So, Deb, how's this going?
I apologize. Sorry. Yes. It'll. Let me show you
Technical.
now.
There we go.
So
Here we go.
this is the kind of thing that you can expect to see. So this is the first page of our newsletter, and as you can see, it's it's very colorful, it's creative, it's you receive it electronically, and oh, this is my technical problem I'm having today. So bear with me a moment.
They are very high quality files, so if they are taking a while to load, that could be because of that.
I think I'm having internet problems. Okay, so oh my gosh, I'm going to get rid of that and we'll just talk about it because that's really terrible, and I apologize for how terrible that is.
That's
Okay,
all right.
so this month's, what I can tell you is this month's newsletter, there's an article about The Mandalorian. There's an article which is talking about the cuteness factor. There is an article about the rise of Skywalker written by a person who's a member of Skywalking. There's also a review of a book about George Lucas. There is a section around new toys that are available to purchase. And there are other little bits and bobs in there. There's, of course, the editor's reports. There's knowledge about what's happening within the club, etc. So there's a whole lot of information. The magazine's about 20 pages long and well worth the read. That's what I just wanted to spruik. Sorry for how bad it looks.
This month, though, there is an interview in there with Catherine, who organises That Geek Pod. And for those who are on the app for Star Walking, those Star Walking members out there, if you are not on the app, you are missing out. There are a lot much more content on the app, and it's exclusive to Star Walking members. And this month, month of May, the podcast of the month is That Geek Pod. So we recommend checking it out. Last month it was Star Wars Spelt Out, and next month's going to be something different. So, it might not be something that you have come across in the past, but we're promoting Australian podcasts and other fellow Australian, content creators in regards to Star Wars. So you may not have come across it before. You may be interested in it. So if you know someone who does a podcast that needs to get some recognition, shoot us an email, send us a link. We may be able to put them as a podcast of the month through the app and promote them through our page.
The other thing that we wanted to talk about this morning was the Twitter poll. So we put up on Twitter, who is the droid that you can hear my puppy coming out of the room. Who is the droid that you would want to be self-isolating with? So our choices were R2-D2, C-3PO, K2SO, and BB-8. We put the poll up on Twitter. We also put the poll up on Facebook, and the results were that the majority of people think that the droid that they would rather spend their time with was thumbs down R2-D2. There wasn't any real competition. People did also like K2SO. I selected K2SO because, he's a bit of smart ass. That works for me. A couple of people interested in C-3PO and a couple of people in BB-8. Personally, if Chopper had been in the list, which unfortunately he didn't make the cut because it was a limit of 4, then I would have gone for Chopper, but it wasn't going to happen. So it seems to be that according to our Star Walking fans, R2-D2 is the winner, but it's R2, so of course.
And we'd like to encourage everyone today, if you think R2 or KTSO. So even though those R2 was clearly the winner on the Twitter poll, we want to conclude this today. So if we have an overwhelming support for K2SO, well, we might deem him the winner. But, if we think R2 is the winner still by the end of today's chat, put it in the comments below. Do you want R2 or what K2? So I'll be monitoring it, so I'll be keeping tab of it all. So put it in the comments below. But I think we should be moving on to our next thing and our special guest today.
Yes, which is probably what most people would rather see than listening to us ramble on. So what I've just noticed in the comments, though, Darren just wanted to spruik his video podcast called the Moss Isley Monthly, and it's on Wednesday at 8 p.m. So if that's something you're interested in, by all means, check that out. You can have a look in the comments later to get more information about that or get in contact with Darren. All right, so our special guest is donbies. donbies, who is currently in America. So we're going to be really appreciative of the fact that he's taking his time out of his Saturday evening, even though it's Sunday for us, to talk to us. I'm also going to introduce to you Andre, who is one of our Star Walking committee members, who is going to be conducting the interview and having a bit of conversation. Following that, Shane, who is our club secretary, will also be part of the interview. So without further ado, I'd like to, before I bring him on, I just wanted to give a little bit of a spiel about who Don is for everyone. So Don worked at ILM as a creature and model maker on films such as Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, Ghostbusters 2, the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, AI, Galaxy Quest, and Pearl Harbor, just to name a few. He also worked on all 3 Star Wars special editions. For the Star Wars prequels, he was the droid department supervisor, including operating R2-D2, winner of course, as well as a supervising model maker. So again, let's welcome Don into our group, and I'm going to say goodbye to Luke for a moment, and we'll say hello to Don.
Hey everyone.
Hi, Don.
How you doing?
Hi, Don.
Okay, right?
Yep, we can hear you loud and clear.
Of course, R2 would have won. I mean, R2's the hero of the saga. I mean, he is the new hope. So
they kind of phased him out a bit in the last couple of minutes.
Because when Yoda said there is another, he was talking about R2.
That's totally what it was. I know that for a fact.
Right.
To you. Ask away.
Before we go too far, I've got to get this one out of the way. Which one is your favourite Star Wars movie, Don?
Oh.
That's a tough one. It would have to be either the original Star Wars. I call it Star Wars. I don't call it A New Hope. But the original Star Wars or Empire Strikes Back. They both jockey back and forth for me as far as which one. Empire is just some excellent filmmaking, but Star Wars was so unique at the time. So
correct. So we can carry on now then.
See, I'd want to hear the least favourite, but I always get in trouble for asking for the least favourite, so we're not going to do it.
Well,
unless you're willing.
I'm not fond of the recent films, but I realize I'm not the age range that they were making them for. So.
That's true.
You don't have to worry about jeopardising your employment either by saying that.
And you're not being biased because you were part of the prequels as well. You were part of the planning for those. And so kudos to you for not being biased, even though you're part of the process. So well done. Impressed.
Yeah, well, it's always hard when you're working on a film. It's always hard to look at it the same way. Star Wars. I was 16 when Star Wars came out, so that changed my life literally. But when I was working on any film I've worked on, it's kind of weird to, look at it as a favorite or something. I have fun experiences or whatever on it, but I don't necessarily, view it the same as somebody that goes to a theater and sees it. So.
Mm-hmm.
You're obviously interested in movies and how they're made, but how did it all start for you? What were the stepping stones that you took early on? How did your career path? How did it develop?
Well, I as long as I can remember, I've loved movies. When I was 6 years old, I discovered the original Boris Karloff Frankenstein movie, and I just was fascinated with that they could make somebody look like that. And so at 6 years old, I'm asking my mother, how did they do that? And she tried to help me wherever she can, got famous monsters of Filmland magazines and stuff like that. Got really big into Planet of the Apes. And then, I learned about makeup, and I thought that's what I was going to do someday. I also, at the same time, the Apollo space program in the US was, really going crazy. So I was fascinated with all those worlds and illusion and all that sort of stuff. And then I had my ape phase. So it was Planet of the Apes and then King Kong and all that. And when Star Wars was coming out, I saw a picture of Chewbacca. I thought, oh, cool, another ape movie. And but I went to see it and it was blown away by it. And the same year that Star Wars came out in 1977 in the US, I had my first job. I had gotten my driver's license, because here at 16 you can get your driver's license, and the whole world was opening up to me. And the place that I was working at, actually, they were filming a movie there. It was a Brian De Palma film called The Fury, one of his lesser known films. But I was there for the couple weeks that the special effects guys were coming in and rigging rides to fly through windows, and I was just watching the process. And so that double whammy of Star Wars coming out, and that experience, I'm doing this. I've got to somehow do it. So I started doing it. There wasn't much of a film industry in Chicago where I grew up, so I started doing some theater stuff, in a little bit in school, and then community stuff, and finding like-minded people. And then, like I said, I had this makeup idea that I thought I'd be interested in. So I was following horror films and that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I had a mechanical side, because I built my own R2D2, radio controlled R2D2 as a fan. And then an opportunity came up to work in California in 1985 on a movie called The Fly, David Cronenberg's The Fly. And so I called up Chris Wayless, who was running that show at his shop here in California, and sent him a portfolio of work that I had done, and he hired me. I fooled him into thinking I could do what he wanted, and it was more mechanical stuff. It was motors and that sort of stuff, puppeteering and that kind of thing. And from that, I just started making connections. Matter of fact, one of the very first people I met at Chris's company was a guy named John Berg, who did the walkers for Empire Strikes Back, and which is my favorite sequence in all the films. And also he did the chess set, and he's one of the band members, and did the Cantina masks and stuff. And John became a really good friend and a mentor over the years. And so through connections, I just got introduced at ILM, and happened to be in the right place at the right time, essentially. So,
yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
So
and sounds like a good start from your mum being supportive as well.
Yeah. My parents were incredibly supportive.
Yeah.
I sculpting and getting clay in the carpet, and all sorts of stuff, and I never got in trouble. So, if they knew what I was doing in the basement, blowing things up and setting stuff on fire to see what would happen, they probably wouldn't have been there.
Wow!
I hope my kids don't. Yeah.
That's awesome that your parents were that supportive. That's really great.
Yeah, I was very lucky that way.
Yeah.
What was the first film you worked on at ILM? What was your contribution?
Well, the very, very first film at ILM was John Berg hired me to puppeteer, and I use that term very loosely for what I did. A puppet of Jack Nicholson for Witches of Eastwick. And I haven't seen the film in a long time, but it's at the end, and the Jack turns into a big creature, and he's the three female leads he's terrorizing. And there was a company down, actually Rob Bottin, who was a friend of Rick Baker's and John's as well, and worked on the Cantina sequence in Star Wars and many other films ultimately. But it was his company that built the puppet. But when they came up and shot it at Industrial Light and Magic, they were down in Los Angeles. Industrial Light and Magic's up by San Francisco. They weren't allowed to. They needed more people to puppeteer. Basically, it actually was something like 30 people to puppeteer this thing. So wow. I got to work on it for a week, and literally all I did was pull the lever and made his tongue come out. That was puppeteering.
Still, you were part of it.
I was part of it. I didn't get credit for it, but it was a lot of fun, and I got to meet a lot of people, and had a good time with it. So,
we have a question from the audience. Who was the first Australian that you ever met?
That would be Dags, Darren Maxwell.
Oh well, Dags is the person who asked the question. That'll be right. Okay.
Yeah. I also saw actually on the message, and I just want to say hi to him. Is Darren Reed? I think popped in, and I just wanted to say hi because Darren, as we'll probably discover as we just do this, I met a whole bunch of Star Walking people because I was the third choice, and Shane can address why. I was the third choice to Star Walk. What was it? Star Walking 2 or something like that. It was 1993.
Right.
Force 2.
Force 2. How about we hold that thought for Shane?
Star Walking 2. But anyway, I met a whole bunch of people.
Although I'm getting the impression Shane might not want to discuss that because he's a little bit nervous about it.
I'm used to it, you know.
What other questions do we have for Don?
Me or the...
You.
Okay. When George Lucas decided to revisit the original trilogy and tweak things, was there a sense of doubt from the original ILM guys? Did anyone think to tell George that Greedo shouldn't shoot first or at all?
You know, the Greedo thing, when we were working on it, I didn't know about that. I think I was as surprised as everybody when that happened. Nice. But you know, I don't think it was it really discussed a whole lot. At ILM, I never got the sense that anybody was that bothered by it. You know, for everybody, a lot of people, it was work. It was a great opportunity for me because I got to actually have some sort of contribution towards these films that I loved. But you know, so I became part of the films in that way. But I don't think anybody had any moral issues with it that I'm aware of. You know, I think the general feeling was it's George's films; he could do whatever he wants with them. I think they should definitely always release both versions. So I think there should be the original version and whatever it became. But yeah, I didn't see anything I was aware of.
How did you feel personally about being able to put your own touch on the original trilogy?
Oh, I mean that was so awesome. One of the things I was working as the archivist for Lucasfilm at the time, and so before I actually came back to ILM to work on it, I was helping them get things to be used in the shoots and that sort of thing, and helping people with doing reference for like X-wings. Like John Knoll came up and photographed X-wing models so that they could make digital ones so that they could use in the battle and stuff like that. And the producer of the special edition, the ILM effects producer, Tom Kennedy, said, "Oh, we need one of the Cantina band member heads from Star Wars." And I said, "Well, we don't have any of those in the archives." And I said, "But I think I know where I can get you one," because I knew the guy. I knew of Doug Beswick, who made the original masks. I said, "I think I can get you one." I said, "But the only way I'll get it for you is if you allow me to be in it." So that was how I got to be the band member in the Jabba musical sequence. And then on that day, that they happened to do the George and Rick came up with the idea of putting Boba Fett in, and so that's how I wound up being in Boba Fett. So, but yeah, it was amazing. It was great to be a part of these films, like I said, that had such an impact on me. So.
Does playing Boba Fett carry more weight now for you with we're hearing that he's going to make an appearance in The Mandalorian and that The Mandalorian series has come out and it's been so successful?
Yeah, I was always impressed with how big of a character Boba Fett was. I never, personally for me, he didn't do much for me. I was more fond of some of the other characters. Not that he was a bad character. I just was like, oh yeah, oh whatever. So me playing Boba was like, oh yeah, whatever. But it took off so much for me personally. I mean, I think so many people are aware of that more than anything else that I've ever done. That'll probably be on my gravestone that I did Boba Fett. But now certainly with all the attention towards The Mandalorian, which is a great series, I really love the series. We were trying to get in touch with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni to because there's a whole group of us that played Boba Fett. There was, besides myself and Jeremy Bulloch, obviously, there was Dickie Beers, who was a stuntman. There's John Morton, who played Dak, who also did it. There's a guy named Mark Austin, who did it for the special editions. Nelson Hall did it for the special editions. Of course, Daniel Logan. We were all trying to get a message to those guys, Filoni and Favreau, to say, hey, wouldn't you like us to have a cameo in The Mandalorian? Wouldn't that be kind of nice? So, we haven't gotten through to him. It hasn't gotten much traction. But maybe if there's a big fan, outcry to say, hey, we should put these guys in as a cameo. So.
Because there's also that helmet that I believe that you signed as well. The Boba Fett helmet.
Oh, the Daniels. That's actually plaques we signed. But
okay.
That he was selling, different one. I think 50 of them or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
With your involvement of being an R2 operator or being involved with R2D2, how were you hands-on with the actual making of the R2 for the prequels?
So the R2s in the prequels, even there were roughly about 8 or 9 in good, relatively decent condition that were used for episode 1 that got shipped over to the UK. And shot for episode 1, and they made a couple extra ones, and then there was a problem at one point where the R2 and didn't want to cooperate a whole lot on episode 1. So I got a call from Rick McCallum, and it was myself, Nelson Hall, and Grant Imahara from Mythbusters fame. The 3 of us got a call from Rick saying, we're having issues, what can we do? These guys over here are somewhat unfamiliar with the R2s, and not that they were doing a bad job. It's just that they kind of tried to reinvent the wheel a little bit. So we had this, Rick had this idea, well, why don't you guys build an R2, and they'll build an R2 and we'll make something that will fix all these issues. So we only built the one R2 for episode 1. All the other R2s in episode 2 and 3 were original R2s from Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. I don't think they built any new ones for Return of the Jedi. So they were all vintage R2s that had been upgraded. They had electronics, and all the motors, actually, some of the motors in the R2s were from Empire Strikes Back. But we only built that one R2, we made it really strong. There was a whole bunch of technical reasons why we needed to build it, but it ended up being kind of in the film a lot for episode 2 and 3. But we had other R2s that did different things too. There was the one.
Yeah, I have an image which I'm going to pull up. You provided me with some images. Is that a full size R2? Or is that just partial R2?
No, it's full size R2.
Sorry?
It's a full size R2. Yeah, that's a full size.
Right. I love this picture though. That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know if I sent you the other one, but there's one where you could see underneath where R2's little feet are dangling out. And we always thought that was hysterical. It was even worse on the other starship, on Obi-Wan's starship. That was actually just a head, but on these, the feet were, it's like where's the body? Where's it go? Like, didn't they think about
it through the bottom?
We also always thought it was like Fred Flintstone. His little feet are going to be.
Right. Maybe he helps with the landing.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember seeing once a buck for a vac-formed dome for the head of R2D2. The original R2s had spun aluminium. How's the technology and the techniques through the years changed?
Well, they not only, some of them were metal, but most of them were metal, but there were some fiberglass ones, and that's why that pattern that existed. So they continued to be using different ones. Matter of fact, that's a fiberglass head on that one. I think that is a fiberglass head. I mean, the body, again, we didn't make any new ones. The only thing we did slightly different was we did a body with carbon fiber, and I'm trying to remember why we did that, why we went through that to do it. I think the idea was to make it kind of lightweight but strong. But the big difference in the ones from years past to more recent, and it's already outdated technology now. I mean, the prequels are over 20 years now, but was the electronics. One of the things that was a big issue on the original ones and even into episode 1 was R2 has all those blinky lights on his head. And way a lot of that was achieved by, there was a big light box with a big halogen bulb in it, like a brake light bulb from a car, actually 2 of them. And then there was a disc that spun with a motor. And then that went to fiber optics to the little readouts and everything all over R2's head. And the sound people hated it because when you rock up R2 for a shot and he's in the background, it's sitting there going, with this horrible little motor sound. So one of the things that we did in episode 2 is Grant Imahara did a solid state version of it. So it was all LEDs and transistors and little computer controlled things. And I don't do electronics, so I don't know exactly what he did, but he did all that. So it was silent. It was great. It was silent. And then the motor technology was better. The radio control technology was far better by that point. So that's where the big challenges is now. If we were to do R2s now, well, they do R2s now in the sequels. I know there's a lot of 3D printing that happens that's taken place. Particularly, I believe C-3PO's costume for the sequels or at least parts of it were 3D printed. That's one of the technologies that really would help.
Yeah, Grant Imahara, he donned the 3PO costume every now and then for public appearances, didn't he?
He's in the movie too. He's in episode 2. Yeah.
Oh, poor Anthony. All right.
Don't tell Anthony. He thinks it's him, but it's not.
Oh. All right. What was the most challenging environment for you and R2 as the operator? What did you find the hardest to get him around the environment?
Stairs. The biggest challenge really was George wanting to direct R2 like an actor, and literally saying he wants to go from there to there and then down. It's like R2 just can't do that. By episode 2, they really realized that they have to consult me or whoever was going to be operating R2 when they were building sets, so that they would, they had the issue of making the doorways not wide enough, making grates in the floor where the wheels would get caught up and that sort of thing. That happened a lot in episode 1. That's one of the technical issues that was always happening, was the grates and floor surfaces. Sand was always an issue, but by episode 2, we had that communication well enough in place between the art department and our department. And they would always, if they were doing a ship, a set or whatever, they knew how wide R2 was, so they knew how wide to make the doors. And then if there was an issue with a grate or something on the floor, they'd bring it over and show it to me. I'd say, yeah, we could do that, or make the holes a little smaller or whatever. So there wasn't, like I said, episode 2 and 3, there wasn't that much of a challenge in that sense. We went to Tunisia for episode 2. And we did operate in the desert, but interestingly, all the areas we operated in, the ground covering was like almost like concrete. It was like the sand. There was no sand. Wasn't loose sand. It wasn't like dunes or anything like that, like you'd see on a beach. It was very hard, and so it rolled great. One area where we did have a little bit of sand, and we just laid a sheet of plywood down and just tossed a little thin coating of sand, was outside Watto's hut when they go see Watto in episode 2. So. The other one was that on that shoot, R2 was supposed to follow behind the little the chariot that they're being dragged in, or whatever, the little cart, and they R2 would have never been, because it was being pulled by a truck. That's how they did that. Then they digitally removed the truck and they put its computer generated character in there. So the way we achieved that was we made a little sled that R2 sat on, and we tied it to the back of the cart that Hayden and Natalie were sitting in, and all I had to do was operate the head. And so the thing just followed them around perfectly. Everyone was surprised at how well I could drive R2, and I didn't tell them that it was just a sled that was being dragged on.
What kind of range did R2 have?
Fast.
The radio control, it was a airplane radio control, so I'm not quite. I don't know how many meters it was, 500 meters or something like that. It was quite a good distance, so it could be quite and especially if you didn't have anything in the way, if there was an
wow.
Because there was a camera in the skirt, wasn't there? So you could actually see where you were navigating.
We did that on episode 1. Yeah, we put a camera in there. We actually never used it. I did practice with it. One of the technical challenges that they had was in Anakin's hut in episode 1 is the set was so small they couldn't get the camera crew, the actors, and an R2 operator all in there. So they never had proper line of sight so they could operate it. So the idea was, well, if we put a camera in R2, then we'd be able to drive it around in a tight, confined area, and it wouldn't be a problem. The obvious place was in the head and in the face of R2, so that when you looked around, you could see it. But that ended up being very confusing to operate, because if the head turned this way, your normal reaction is to keep driving straight. But in reality, the head's just turning, you're driving that way. So we put it in the skirt because that was the least obvious place that it could be in. There was stuff in the way in every other place. And back then the cameras, although they were small, it wasn't that small. And so it needed a certain amount of space. So we put it in the skirt. I did drive it all over ILM when we were building it with just using the camera, and it worked great, but it ended up never having to need it. And we eventually pulled it out of there because we never used it. So.
Yeah, could run amok through the mess hall.
I have a question about what's happening in this picture, if the picture comes up.
Yeah, that's this special edition with the Wampa, and that's a colleague, a guy actually I worked on The Fly with, a guy named Howie Weed. And Mark Siegel's got his back to us. Mark Siegel was the sculptor, one of the sculptor of the original Slimer for Ghostbusters too. Ghostbusters, the original. Right. This is just filming Howie as the Wampa, because they never, they added all that sequence. And all I'm doing was just providing stage support for Howie, because he needed someone. I'm holding a hose that actually, hose cable, I can't remember. We had a hose that would give him air in there, and then he also had cables to control the face on it. So.
A hose for air for the person inside the suit.
Cooling down between shots.
Right.
Yeah. We just prop it open and stick it in there and blow cold air in there.
Wow. Okay. Cool. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's been cleared up.
Yeah, thank you. I was just really curious as what was happening in that picture. Okay. Particularly what you were holding. Thank you. Do you have another question?
What would you consider your greatest contribution to Star Wars?
Wow. Well, I'm proud of the R2 stuff. Although that, I didn't really contribute it in that I didn't make it originally or anything like that, but really happy with that, the stuff I did on there. One of the things I really lobbied to do as a prop was the mask that goes on Anakin at the end of Revenge of the Sith. I did the whole interior. I did the whole mask, that whole prop. So I really wanted to do that because that was one of my favorite props that was in the archives, the original one. And we didn't have access to the original one. And the original one wasn't detailed on the inside anyway, but we didn't have access to the original one when we were shooting that because it was on, I think it might've been in Sydney actually on a exhibition, Magic of the Myth tour. And so we had to recreate it, so that was a lot of fun.
Probably this. Hold it up. Probably that exhibition.
Yeah, it might have
which was at the Powerhouse Museum.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay.
so we didn't have access to it, so we had to make a new one.
I'm going to pause the interview just for a moment. This is to everyone who's listening. If you have any questions, by all means, pop them in. I'm going to make us disappear, and I'm going to welcome Shane, our secretary, into the conversation so he can continue talking with Don. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Hey, Shane.
Is Don is good.
Your second choice. See, I came on first, and you're second.
Yeah. It was 27 years ago. And you might have met Darren the first time, but your first Aussie you spoke to was?
That's you. And I thought someone was pranking me when you called.
Your very bad, poor Aussie accent, trying to invite you to Australia.
That's right. Like, who's going to want me to come to Australia? That's silly.
And that was the Star Walking, the second convention in 1993.
That's right. Yeah.
We did the Jedi 10.
I knew there was a 2 in there. Yeah.
Yeah. And we have it, though you were third choice, we have invited you back 3 times.
That's true. Yeah. I eventually did. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
You're the perennial guest. Yes. I can't believe it's gone that fast, that long, but, it was 27 years ago.
That's insane, isn't it? I mean, Force 2 Force 2 was 25 years ago, right? So.
Yeah, well, that was in 95, and then we did 1999 Force 2, sorry. Force 3.
Yeah.
You didn't do Force 2, that was in 97.
Okay. So what was 95 then? What was that one?
With you and John Berg and Nelson.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Force.
That was Easter. That was in Easter.
And then the 99 was Hugh Corshi and...
that's right. Michael Stackpole, the 2 authors. Yeah. And yourself, of course. Yeah.
Steve didn't come back for that one. No.
Beg your pardon?
Steve didn't come back for that one, was he?
He was in here for 97.
He was there
in 95.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, 95 and 97. Yeah, so. And we invited back twice was Boba Fett, of course. The original. Jeremy Bullock.
Jeremy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was in 89 and
Kenny
97. Yes, Kenny Baker twice, that's true.
Right.
And Dave Prowse.
That's right.
We've been busy.
Yeah.
We've been busy.
The golden age.
The golden age, yes.
Who knows, it might happen again. We might be able to organise something else in the future.
Well, you'd have to sell.
I always thought it was great that, because episode 2 and 3 was shot right there, and so you had a lot of local talent. I mean, one of the guys that was on my crew,
Justin Dix,
and I met him in 95, at the convention. So yeah, it was, or no, actually 99. I think it was 90. Well, 95 and
99. Yeah.
And
you probably met him beforehand. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was, it was great to be able to use local talent like that. So.
Talent.
At home, and the dates going backwards and forwards. Force 1 was 95, Force 2 was 97, and Force 3 was 99.
Okay.
That's right. And Star Walking, the first convention was in 89, and Star Walking, the second convention, 93.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so we've been busy over the years. And of course, you used Hugh Fleming, of course, too, for your poster for Keep the Gas Burning.
Yeah.
And you were producer off. He did the artwork for you.
Yeah, I mean, Hugh's amazing talent, and I got to meet. I think it was 99 that I first met Hugh, and or maybe it was earlier. I don't know, whatever it was. But I actually remember running into Hugh in San Diego Comic-Con one year too. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think he's been to Celebration too.
Yeah, it would have been in the 90s that I saw Hugh.
Because he started with Dark Horse Comics.
Right.
Cover art for them. Yeah.
Yeah, I always love Hugh's style. Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Of course, we had your mate John Berg in 95. Yes, the Force 1.
Yeah, and Nelson.
And Nelson. Yes, you brought whole island with you.
Yeah. Well, I got married that year, so I had to have somebody.
Oh yes, the marriage. I remember that. Yeah, to your ably assisted wife, who was very integral with working on the Phantom Menace. She did the crowd scenes with all the cotton buds, thousands of them.
She helped on actually episode 1 and 2. So
Yeah, and she got a. She's actually in the film herself.
that's right.
She's,
I should have brought it over. I've got the little. She's the Topps trading card with her hands. Yeah, because she's
yeah.
Anakin's hands in the pod race. That's right.
Yeah, because she needed small hands, and she was it.
Yeah.
I suppose we could talk about some of your other things, Don. Maybe let's talk about the film that you produced, Keep the Gaslight Burning.
Okay.
Which we've just seen the image of just then.
What's that? Oh, there's the.
We just saw the image. Oh yeah, well, that's Anna.
Those are the cotton swabs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, cotton buds.
Yeah.
So Keep the Gaslight Burning was actually came out of our connection in Australia with Dave and Lou Elsey. They were the creature supervisors, creature creators for episode 3. And they had been in there, although they're British born, they were in Sydney doing Farscape at the time, right prior to Star Wars. And when we needed a place to have our droid department for episode 3, we shared a space with Dave and Lou in their creature shop. And actually that's Dave is the one way in the back and Lou's underneath his arm under the blue shirt. So Dave and Lou, we met in 2003 or something like that. And we stayed in touch. We always were looking for a project to work on together. A couple things came really close and then they fell apart, whatever. And we went down, they live in LA now. They live in Los Angeles. And we went down, Anna and I and my daughter went down into Los Angeles is actually 3 years ago now. And roughly around this time. And we said, hey, we should do something together. And Dave said, oh, I have a script of a short story. And Anna and I said, well, we can get a crew together. Let's shoot it. And 63 days later, we were shooting it. And they got, they're good friends with Rick Baker, who's like, I don't know, he's won about 150 Academy Awards or something. I don't know, something like 8 or 9. I don't know. He's run a whole bunch of Academy Awards.
Just a few.
Yeah, he just a couple. And he did American Werewolf in London. He did Michael Jackson's Thriller. So really, really well known. He was King Kong in the De Laurentiis King Kong. So he was always a big idol of mine as well. And so Dave and Lou had worked with him on The Wolfman, that Benicio del Toro movie with Anthony Hopkins, directed by, of all people, Joe Johnston, who was art director on at ILM for Star Wars and Empire and Jedi. And so Dave said, I think I could get Rick to play our ghost in it. And then I know that she's not as well known in Australia, but in the US, she's pretty well known. An actress named Marky Post, who was on a very popular TV show called Night Court in the 80s. And that happens to be a really good friend of theirs as well. So we got Marky and we got Rick, and then Marky's daughter is an actress and out of New York, and we got her to be in it. And we just shot it, and it was loads and loads of fun. And it made the rounds at theater festivals, actually all over the world, and film festivals, that is, sorry, all over the world, and won a whole bunch of awards. We got, I think, 4 best horror film awards and a couple honorary mentions and stuff like that. So we did really well with it. It was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I don't think it runs on Amazon here in the US and in the UK, but I don't think you can see it in Australia.
No, we haven't actually got access to that particular show through Amazon. I've got access to Amazon on my end, but we've got different access, unfortunately. So I have seen the trailer for it online. I have had a look on YouTube, and it is there. But it's very intriguing. I would like to watch the whole thing when I get.
It's only 18 minutes, so it's a pretty quick.
Yeah.
So,
and of course, Don, it's not your. Of course, Don, it's not your first movie, because you've made another one called Under the Dome.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was actually a joke. idea that it started back on episode 1 when we were there's really two really great guys that I was operating R2s with on episode 1 when we were doing the big like hangar scenes. There were like 4 R2s operating, and they weren't all R2D2s. They were, R2D2 was operated by one person, and myself and the other 2 guys, Graham Riddell and Patrick Johnson, were operating other R2s. And we were up in the rafters looking down for, shooting while they were shooting, because we could see the robots really well, and we could drive them all over, and it was great. So we were just, the 3 of us were up there laughing and having a good time, and we kept on joking we should get a big ball, and we could play. They could play football, bouncing back and forth, and maybe we should shoot that. Get the documentary crew to shoot that. Or then we were joking and say, oh yeah, we just be the day in the life of R2D2 or something. And I happened to, nothing ever came of it. And on episode 2, I happened to mention it to my crew and also the documentary filmmakers that were there. And everyone's like, yeah, we should do it. Let's do it. So we started writing up these little jokes, and we'd film a little bit here and there. And it started getting around the lot a little bit. And since the documentary guys were interviewing the actual actors for the film, they would always throw in, at the end of the interview, they would ask Ewan McGregor or Natalie Portman or Samuel Jackson about R2, what they thought about R2 as an actor. And so they would just improv some answer or something. There was no script, it was just these guys making fun of it. And so, like I said, people started hearing about this, and other people wanted to be in it. And Natalie had a friend is staying in Sydney with her, who is a budding actress. And so she decided she wanted to play R2's girlfriend. So we wrote stuff in, and we filmed things with her doing that. And then it started getting bigger, and then the PR department started getting involved. And I think I mentioned to Ben Burt what we were doing, and out at Fox Studios in Sydney, in the middle of there was like they'd have like food merchants and selling fresh fruit and everything, and then. But then there was almost like a fair atmosphere sometimes on the grounds there, and they had a big bungee jump over a 10-foot deep pool, and so people could go and bungee jump. Yeah, there's Ben and I, and this was at the 40th anniversary of ILM, 40th anniversary of Star Wars. So he said, "Oh, R2 should bungee jump," and we're like, that would be kind of funny. So we did that. We had to ask George for that one. So we told George what we were doing, and he said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." So we rigged up an R2. It was a fake R2. It wasn't one of the real ones, because it was a good thing, because when it hit the water, it broke. But
oops.
So
we did. It wasn't one of the real ones.
And then it kind of was it. Then we went off on location, and then. About 6 months after the location shooting was done, they kind of came back to me and said, "Hey, so you got all this footage with this. What were you intending?" And I said, well, we wanted to somehow string it together into some coherent story. So we reviewed a lot of the footage, and we kind of wrote a script that tied it together. And then we started doing other interviews. Like George got interviewed. We had some fake actors, fake people playing R2's brother or sister or whatever. And then they were also doing other interviews at the time for other things. And that's how they got Richard Dreyfuss in there. I think Carrie Fisher got interviewed at that point. And we strung it together and made this. It was a 3-part web series that was on StarWars.com. So I think you can still get it. And they eventually released it on a DVD as well. So.
Was your entry into Lucasfilm via the archives or through the creature model shop with ILM?
Technically, by doing the Witches of Eastwick thing, I was through ILM, but same year, so I did the Witches of Eastwick thing in like April of that year, and in August or June, July of that year, the guy that had been operating R2 for personal appearances and other things just had gotten a job at Disney Imagineering. So he left. He was leaving to go to work at Disney, and they needed someone to operate R2 for a series of Japanese commercials that were coming up. So so I
Panasonic.
Yeah, Panasonic. Yeah, and so I auditioned. I just didn't run over anybody with. That was the audition. And,
you got the job.
And I got the job, and then we did a bunch of. It was about a week's worth of shooting for these commercials, and so that was my second gig at ILM. But then, because of the connection with the characters and my knowledge of Star Wars and stuff, they hired me to start cleaning out the archives. So I was bouncing back and forth between archives and ILM starting around that point too. So.
Because it took you all over the world. All right. Okay.
Sorry, Shane, to interrupt there. We do have a few questions on the live feed for Don. The first one, though, ask Don about his Industrial Light and Magic jacket.
The one that Darren really wanted. I believe he's referring to the fact that when I got off the airplane, I was wearing that we had what they call the varsity jackets. They look like school jackets. So there was like a twill body with leather sleeves, and it had the big ILM magician on the back. I was wearing that when I got off the plane, and I think Dags lusted after that every day. I had that. I think he wanted to steal it from me. So, he said, "Yep."
Yeah.
But I think you eventually got one, didn't you? I was able. Yeah, I think I was able to hear some.
I got one too.
That's great. Oh yeah. Okay. Cool.
It's in the wardrobe, but I can't believe.
There was another question that came up through as well. There was comments through our Twitter feed as well. So it's not just through Facebook. There was a message about Pirates of the Caribbean, that you had a big impact on that. So what was your most exciting... I can't really read that person's writing, but what was your most exciting experience working on the Pirates of the Caribbean movies?
That was fun because prior to coming in doing Pirates, we're back to back on Star Wars and then the Matrix sequels. And technically by the way, that ship is from Peter Pan, which was shot in Sydney, but it's not Pirates. But we did a whole bunch of ships, one right after another. So going on to Pirates was a lot of fun because we were building these things like real ships were, except much smaller. And that's us assembling one upside down. Again, that's the Peter Pan ship, but that's exactly how we did the pirate ships for Pirates of the Caribbean. And so having done the science fiction-y, fantasy kind of model making and everything, it was really cool to come in and do the pirate ships it was such an old old craftsman kind of way of doing it. However, we put our own spin on it because we were using computers to build and laser cut things and do all that construction. But yeah, that's what I did. I did the computer work on it. I built all the bulkheads and everything. The very first ship they built for Pirates of the Caribbean was I can't remember the name. It's the one that Orlando Bloom's on that gets blown up. I can't remember the name of the ship, but
okay, yep.
Yeah, and they did that traditionally where they laid out the blueprints on a piece of paper and then they traced it onto some wood and then they cut it out with a saw and it took like 4 people 3 weeks or something to get to the point where they had the skeleton of the ship. And then when we started to work on the Black Pearl, we had a 3D model of that. And I suggested that we could do that all in the computer. So I did all that work in the computer. And it wasn't because I was really top notch at this or anything. It was the tool was different, and I was able to do the same work in about 2 weeks of time. And so that became the standard how we built the ships from that point on. So we did the Black Pearl, we did the Dauntless, which was the bad guy's ship, or the Royal Navy ship.
The Royal Navy,
and then we followed Pirates of the Caribbean up with Peter Pan, and we built a ship for that. There's a whole story in it. We actually built the ship twice. There's a whole story about that. That's too long to get into. But we built the same ship twice. And then I think we followed right up with Pirates 2 or something like that. And we also built a ship for, it was like a series. I think it was something like 11 ships in 5 years that I worked on. We built a ship for, which was a modern ship, was the ferry that got overturned by the aliens in War of the Worlds. And then again for Pirates 3, we built actually 3 versions. We had 3 versions of the Dauntless. The original, it became the Endeavor. It was the same ship. It was based on the HMS Victory, but the Dauntless model that we built for the original Pirates became the Endeavor for the 3rd episode, and then we built 2 other versions of it that we blew up. One that was just the deck that was a 3rd scale, and then one that was the whole ship that you see blowing up, which was a 6th scale one. So they were huge ships. I mean, the deck of the Dauntless or the Endeavor was, I think, 33 feet long. And the 6th scale ship was, I think, about 28 feet long. So they were pretty big ships.
So last question before we do have to wrap this up, unfortunately. Going forward, do you think there's going to be a lot more of the model making and creature building from the way you were doing it, like even 20 years ago, or more of the computer stuff and only the computer stuff, or is it all just going to be a bit of a mix going forward?
Well, it seems like it went during the prequels. There was this push to go away from that. The interesting thing is that in the prequels, and this got buried in all the press a lot, because they were really trying to push it to look like, they were doing the digital, which was all new and shiny, and it's like, look at what we can do with computers. And they could do amazing things with computers. I do things with computers. I love working in that medium. But we had more models, which was all new and shiny, and we had more models on our on episode 3 than they did in the original, the entire original trilogy. So we did. I mean, I worked on those films for a year and a half, 2 years, not only on shooting for how many months it was, but also building models for that time. So it was, they kind of played that down. So it never really went away. However, the ILM model shop did go away. They decided they didn't want to spend, because the footprint of a model shop from an accounting standpoint, we need a lot of big space to build stuff. But when you have a workstation, it's only your little footprint of your computer and your seat. So they could fit more people into workstations in an office building than they need a warehouse to build models. So we became financially unviable after some time, and especially since they wanted to push more digital, it didn't. We stopped being viable for them from a financial standpoint. So they kind of moved away from it for a while, and then with the sequels, I think they did realize, the prequels have a bad rap because of all this computer stuff, which it didn't really all have computer stuff, and so they tried to make this big deal that we're doing all this practical stuff. In reality, they probably did less than what we did on the on the prequels. Yeah. So I mean, going forward, there's really good reasons to do both. It's a very different world now, aside from the whole coronavirus thing, but it's a very different world in filmmaking as far as the technology to make models and practical. The biggest problem with is that so many people of that did that are all aging out or passing away. So you don't have quite the experience level that are out there. Although they still do a fair amount in the UK. So, Yeah, I think like I said, there's strong pros and cons to have both practical and digital, and a nice
That's good.
blend together. You get a really good feel of a look of stuff. So
Yeah, I have watched films like not Star Wars, and they do have that sort of practical effect as well as the digital effect. You can see the difference between the two, and I feel that they do need to keep that going. And like you said, it's an aging industry. You guys were all building it, 20, 30, 40 years ago for the films, and there's not a lot of people now in that industry going to keep going, which is unfortunate. So
yeah, and like I said, it's a different world now too, because the filmmakers don't, the people making the films and making the decisions don't understand how you could work with it. It's we worked on, for instance, on Indiana Jones Last Crusade. One of the things I did on that, well, main thing I did on it was I was on the team that made the Donovan the destruction when he drinks from the wrong Holy Grail. I think we had 6, 7, 8 months to work on that thing. That would be unheard of now. People want things in 2 or 3 weeks, and
you'd have a different kind of deadline.
Yeah, so you just don't have the amount of time, and so they don't look at it the same way. So they don't realize that tool can be in their toolbox. I worked on a commercial a few years ago where they were all from a digital standpoint, and we had these physical props that they were using, and there was something very simple that we could have done right there on set, and I suggested how to do it, and they didn't want to do it because they only knew digital.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, well, the other aspect of it was perhaps maybe they didn't want to work themselves out of a job or something. I don't know, because we got it on the shot and the set, then they wouldn't have to do it later. So
no, that's fair enough. I do have to finish this up here. Unfortunately, we're going to be sort of slowing this down. Deb,
nice jacket there, Shane.
Yeah.
Yes,
You got me the jacket.
Coming back on in a moment. Yes, and we've got a Yoda in the background somehow. So,
Hello there, Yoda.
on behalf of Star Walking, we want to thank you for joining us today, Don. We appreciate your expertise and experiences.
Thank you, and everyone there, stay safe and stay healthy.
We wish the same for you as well. So, I'm not sure. You did say offline that you guys were having some eases of the restrictions June 1st. Hopefully that stays ahead and goes in the right direction.
Yeah, same with you guys, because I know you're easing some stuff now too. So
we are here at the moment. Yes.
Appreciate your time. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Same here. Thank you. Hopefully we'll all meet in person. And good to see you there, Darren Reed.
Is Don is goodbye.
Thank you. All right. Just you're
just
back.
As we're finishing up.
No. Yeah, just so we can finish up. Just a reminder. Jeez, Shane keeps dropping in and out. Just a reminder that if you're a club member, your membership is due. And remember, with your club membership this year, you get your really cute Star Walking exclusive key ring. And we'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll have trivia. We will have Can You Fool a Star Wars Expert? And maybe we might be lucky enough to have another guest. Having Don here was fantastic. And I'm sure I learnt a lot. I'm sure everyone else did as well. And see you guys in 2 weeks. Anything else from you, Luke?
No, I just want to wish everyone a safe, safe time during the restrictions being easing. That doesn't encourage people to go out and be silly. So if we are all safe and only go out when we have to, guys, the restrictions will be eased a lot better and a lot quicker. So we're all safe in the future. So be safe, be sensible, and we'll see you guys on here in 2 weeks' time. And may the Force be with you guys.
Peace out.